introduce Perry Neal today. I just got to talking with him a little bit before we came up, and I consider him a new friend. I'll tell you a little bit about Perry. In 2012, after a disastrous presentation in front of 50 people, Perry Neal joined Toastmasters. Like many, he joined to improve his presentation skills. What he never counted on were the opportunities to grow in leadership skills. In addition to serving at the club level, he's served in various district roles. In 2018, his district leadership journey culminated in his election as district director. As a past district director, Perry has remained active in his district and community. He served 2 years on the board of a diversity and inclusion organization, as well as several terms as district leadership committee chair. When not serving in an official capacity, he served as a mentor and advisor to multiple district leaders. In 2023, Perry wanted to continue serving Toastmasters, so he applied to serve as a region advisor and was appointed to serve as Region 7 advisor in February of 2024. Today, Perry will be talking about conflict resolution. They say only two things are certain in life, death and taxes, but Perry would like to add conflict as one of those certainties. A timer will be giving you 25 minutes to the green light, 27:30 to the yellow light, and 30 to the red light. Please help me welcome Region Advisor and Distinguished Toastmaster, Mr. Perry Neal.
Good morning, everybody. How you doing? Well, Felicia was talking about dad jokes, so I'm a dad, a granddad, so I've got to go with a couple. I've got a 7-year-old grandson and an 18-year-old grandson. I don't know. This kills with the 7-year-old. What kind of shoes do chickens wear? Read, buck, 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 buck. Why are chickens so funny? Because. Okay, it kills with not just 7-year-olds. That's great. And before we get started, some people don't know what the region advisor position entails. How many of you are familiar with your area directors? I do that for the districts. That's all what it is. I work with districts to help them achieve their mission, achieve distinguished status. There's a shoulder to cry on. There's an advisor to help out whenever I can. So we're talking about conflict. Like I said, it's a part of life. How many here have never been in a conflict? Okay, I mean, we're individuals, we're humans, we're complicated. We can't all feel the same way about everything. I mean, how boring would that be? Some people like Mexican, some people like Asian. I got introduced to I think it's Western African cooking, which was really good. In a workplace, we disagree over policies, decisions, tactics. The fact that my boss doesn't think I deserve a raise and I think I do. Personal, tell me I am not the only person who's had, let's euphemistically call it a spirited discussion with my spouse over finances, vacation, how to raise the kids, how to discipline the kids. Even in Toastmasters. Anybody here on the free Toast platform? Okay, when you print out the agendas, you can pick multiple templates. I like this template. My fellow member likes this one. It's a discussion where to continue the meet or where to have the meetings, whether to change them, how to do the meeting roles. My club almost went to war over switching from twice a month meetings to weekly meetings. I'm serious, it was a war. Well, at the time we had somewhere between 50 and 60 members, and even with 5 speaking slots a meeting, we could not get everybody enrolled. So we were trying to go to weekly meetings. And don't get me started on politics and religion. The conflict isn't always bad. When you address it and you resolve it, it can actually lead to positive changes. It can lead to increased productivity, higher morale, trust amongst team members. But if it isn't resolved, it's going to fester and it's going to lead to the opposite of all those. And as a leader, you have to know how to handle conflict. I always like to start off with defining terms. And we're talking about conflict. Now, as it says, two or more people have differences. I want to stress real or imagined that aren't addressed. I'm a husband. Where are my other fellow husbands? We know it is completely, absolutely possible to be losing an argument you don't even know you're having. And as leaders, I'm going to tell you, you have exactly two chances to get out of conflict. First one is 0. Anybody know what the other one is? 0. I was just giving you a little bit of hope. Conflict resolution, what you do to identify and address conflict, I want to stress in a mature and respectful manner. Well, let's talk about the different types of conflict. I'm sure you can find more, but for the purposes of this presentation, and since I'm the one standing up here, we're going to talk about 4 different types. Contentious personalities. Like I said, as humans, we're complex, we're complicated. There is so much stuff that goes into our makeup, our culture, our community, our parents, the way we were raised, our experiences growing up. And sometimes people flat out don't like each other. Flat out. I'm country, so flat out. I was in the Navy and there was a guy in another department that was new to the ship. Hadn't talked to him, never said a word to me, hated his guts. I couldn't stand to listen to him breathe. Became my best friend. So see if any of these sound familiar to you. A know-it-all.
23 people.
If you talk to my wife, that's me. If you talk to my wife, that's me. She says, why do you always have to argue? And I said, I am not arguing. Then she's, what are you doing? I said, I'm simply explaining why I'm right and they're wrong. A people pleaser, that is not me. Shut up. Don't go there. Definitely not that either. Now, if none of these contentious personalities sound familiar, if you have never experienced one of them, maybe you're the problem. It's possible. Misunderstanding. By far, this is the largest category of conflicts. And I had to get involved with a district recently to resolve their conflict, and it was all misunderstandings. It goes back to simple misunderstandings between people. Remember when I talked about real or imagined differences? The conflict I had to get involved with was the district director on one of the calls with one of the deck meetings was really excited about the conference and started talking about the conference. That's the purview of the program quality director. Now, instead of saying, it kind of hurt my feelings and made me feel like you didn't respect me when you talked about it, just assumed that he meant to say that. These folks lived within 2 miles of each other and weren't talking to each other. My coworker, he and I will get into knockdown, drag out arguments, just, and then we take 5 seconds and step back and realize we're saying exactly the same thing. We're just using different words. He's not saying what I want him to say. Issues. Sometimes we have differences of opinions with other people's expectations, their perceptions, their objectives. Tell me if this doesn't sound familiar. We judge people by their actions. Fair? When we judge ourselves, what do we judge by? Our intentions. Shouldn't we actually judge them the same way we judge ourselves and vice versa? Styles of leadership. Every one of us as a leader has a default leadership style. So when you're interacting with people who have a different style, there's a little conflict there. That's why as a leader, you have to learn how to adapt your leadership style to the people you're working with. All right, so let's talk about the methods for resolving conflict. Let's ignore it. I mean, for small issues, this is the way to go. For example, remember when I was talking about the differences in agenda templates. I want it this way. My fellow member wants it that way. In the overall scheme of thing, and for the purposes of the club, who cares? You print it your way, I'll print it my way. Let's move on. The other thing too, if you don't do something, if you just ignore it, the problem's not going to go away. It's going to fester and it's going to become a bigger problem. We could smooth it over. That works in relationships a lot. This is where the issues are more important to the parties involved than to the person in charge. If I'm the club president, somebody comes to me and they said, well, I think we should do the meeting role this way. I think we should do it. I don't care. Just smooth it over. You do it the way you want. This works best in emergencies when you have to make quick decisions. Heads up, you're probably never, ever going to run into this in Toastmasters. Here's one thing. As leaders, we have lots of demands on our time, especially when you get to the trio level. When you're sitting in Felicia's seat, everybody wants something and they all think they can do your job better than you can do it. They just won't step up and do it. So I want you to remember this acronym, RIOT, R-I-O-T. Relax, it's only Toastmasters. Nobody has ever died from Toastmasters. Felicia would say, sometimes I want to. Compromise. I like to joke that a good compromise is when nobody's happy, but nobody's unhappy enough to do something about it. It's a good compromise. The problem is this results in pretty much in lose-lose situation. The people involved each lose a little bit. And since they lose, they're probably not going to be as invested in your solution. By far, I think collaboration is the way to go. Because each side recognizes the other side's issues and needs as important and legitimate. And they work together to find a solution. And when they work together to find a solution, the buy-in for the solution is going to be greater. And hopefully, I'll say in parentheses, nobody harbors any ill will or resentment or distrust. I say hopefully. So I think we can all agree that collaboration is the best way to go. And since I'm presenting this, that's what we're going to agree. So let's talk about how we can facilitate collaboration. I like to have a good time. And if there's any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to put up your hands because I don't really think this is going to last a half an hour. We'll see. You want to find the root cause of the situation. Anybody here in sales? And I apologize to the online folks for not talking to you because I don't have a monitor. So anybody here in sales? Well, I'm talking about for a profession. In sales, a lot of times, you're talking to a prospect. I don't like that color. I don't like that model. I don't like this feature. That's not the problem. The problem is they don't think they can afford it, but they're not going to tell you. So you want to find the root cause. You want to keep the discussion focused and don't let it devolve. Avoid whataboutism. This is a big one. Ladies, you are so good in arguments with your spouses because we are handicapped as men. We feel this pathological need to discuss one item at a time. Ladies, when we pin you down, when I pin my wife down on a subject, oh yeah, well, what about blah, blah, blah? My mind is still back here trying to figure on this. Now she started a new argument over here that I'm not ready to have. So try to avoid that. And once you figured out what the issues are, start focusing on the solutions. Don't worry about blaming. I'm sure we got a lot of military or ex-military in here. When you're in a military, especially if you're deployed on a ship or forward and something goes wrong, I don't care about blame. I care about getting the problem fixed and let's get back to operations. We can worry about blame later. And we sure do. Oh, we blame. You want to allow all the parties to speak because open communication is important. And here's the thing, you need to let them express their views uninterrupted. Now in this conflict I did with the other district, I started set ground rules. Here's what we're going to do. You're each going to get a chance to speak. You don't interrupt. You speak respectfully. You don't accuse. Don't say the words always and never because nobody ever always does something and nobody always never does that. I know what I meant to say. I think you know what I meant to say. I said, here's the thing. If you disagree with something that's being said, make a note. You can come back to it later. You also want to talk about how the conflict is affecting the members' performance, the team's performance. Their disagreement is affecting the team's outcome. And please try to avoid emotions. And that's why we always say I empathize with you, not sympathize with you. Empathize means with you, I understand what you're going through. I'm not going to get into the emotional part of it. Definitely encourage everybody to listen because, like I said, you want to let them talk without interruption. Ask questions if you don't understand something that's being said, if you've been called in to mediate it. Here's another thing too, that you've heard this one before. Restate what they're saying in your own words. So what I think I hear you saying is blah, blah, blah. Is that a fair statement? I think a better tactic is if you get two people, if it's a conflict between two people, party A says, here's what I think the problem is. Ask party B to restate party A's opinion or their view. That means they're starting to get invested. They understand what the other person's going through. You want to identify your areas of disagreement because that's where the real issue is. Here's another thing. Previous disagreements, conflicts, behaviors, don't bring them up. I go back to marriages and their discussions. My wife will say something like, well, you did blah, blah, blah on September 23rd, 10 years ago. I don't remember what we had for dinner last night at Cracker Barrel, but it sounds like something I would do. So I just say, okay, sorry. Limit the discussion to the facts and what's happening now. And as I said earlier, please stay away from that. Oh yeah, what about? This can be just as important. Identify areas of agreement because most of the time we agree on far more than we disagree. And the more you can get them to focus on what they agree on, then maybe the disagreement becomes a little less. And once everybody's spoken, help them focus in on what the goals, the interests, and the values are. Both parties should collaborate to search for solutions. Because if they're both working for the solutions, your job here is you're trying to get buy-in for the solution they pick. And then reach a consensus. You want to review the list of possibilities, evaluate each suggestion, and then pick the one that's the best. Brainstorming is a great way to do this. And brainstorming, this is going to help us accomplish step 6 and 7 from the previous one. You're going to list every possible solution. I don't care how ridiculous it sounds. I think we need radar-guided, heat-seeking rat missiles. It goes on the list. Don't worry about whether you've tried it before. Don't worry about whether it's practical, whether it's too expensive, whether it's outright ridiculous. It goes on the list. Once you've got all the possible solutions, now here's something I would recommend. As the mediator, you don't suggest anything. Let them do all the suggesting. The problem is as leaders, and I see this a lot like on the trio, if they're in the middle of something, I always recommend leaders speak last, because if you speak first and say, I think we should do X, Y, Z, the team thinks, oh, well, they know best, so that's what we're going to do, or they've already made up their mind. Why should I even bother? Leaders speak last, if at all. Now, once they've got their list of suggestions, go down the list, discuss the pros, the cons, the practicality, the cost. Nothing comes off that list unless both parties agree it comes off that list. And then once you're left, whatever's not crossed out, those are your list of possible solutions. And you do this again. Both parties have to agree on what gets tossed out. That's how you're going to get buy-in. Oh, I guess I could have done going through my slides, huh? Write down all ideas, discuss each suggestion, and narrow the list down to the best. Sorry about that. I told you this wasn't going to be as long as I thought it was. As long as humans interact with each other, there's going to be conflict. I made the green card, or were you just waiting? You were so interested you didn't give me the green card. Okay. And I know it can be difficult when you're in the middle of a conflict, but try to look at this as a leadership opportunity. You want to keep everybody focused on the goals. I've just finished reading a good book. John Maxwell's got a new book out called Leader Shift with an F. And he's got some really good things in there. And one of the things he says, it's not about the role, it's about the goal. I don't care what your role in the district is. We've all seen the upside down triangle. That's what it should be. As leaders, we're down here at the bottom. I'm sorry, we're up here where it's broad. The members at the bottom, because without the member, none of us really needs a job. You want to keep the discussion focused on the issues and search for ideas and solutions that'll be acceptable to everybody. Like I said, this could be a great leadership opportunity because good leaders don't fear crises or challenges. I know when a challenge comes up, COVID was a perfect one. I want to be upfront and honest. I said, this is the death of Toastmasters. I know we went through a Great Depression, a World War, a Korean War, a Vietnam War, the oil embargo in the 70s, the Cold War. We're still here. Why did I think a pandemic was going to kill us off? But when there's challenges, great leaders, well, good leaders see that as an opportunity to shine. So don't be afraid of a good, get in there, dig into it. Because I always say that you'll remember conflicts, but you really remember the person that stepped in and resolved the conflict peacefully. And like I said, an effective leader has to be able to resolve conflict because when everybody wins, the team wins. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Perry. We really appreciate that. That is medicine. And come on up, Randy. Come back, Perry. Yes.
Yes, you need the exercise, so.
Steps.
See, nobody ever makes New Year's resolutions. I kept all my New Year's resolutions this year. I resolved to eat less, exercise less, and gain weight. And so far, so good.
So far, nothing like success. The district would like